There is a pulse beneath the world you've been taught to see, a current that moves through everything and yet is noticed by almost nothing. It is not poetic fluff, not spiritual metaphor, but the very architecture of what is real. Before the form, before the thought, before even the breath, there is vibration. A frequency that hums beneath every cell, every object, every emotion. You've felt it before, though no one taught you how to name it. You've walked into a room and known something was off before anyone spoke. You've touched someone's hand and felt the tremor of truth or the shadow of a lie. That knowing wasn't imagination. It was the language of energy. And it's the first language you ever knew. Before you were given a name, before you learned to think in words, you were already swimming in a sea of signal. But the world you entered was not built to honor that language. It was built to drown it out. You were trained from a young age to trust what you could see, measure, predict. You were handed a lens and told, "This is reality." And anything outside that lens was dismissed as superstition, delusion, or coincidence. So you stopped listening. You stopped feeling. Not because you failed, but because you were domesticated. Pulled into a system that needed your compliance more than your clarity. And in that forgetting, the world lost something sacred. Not magic tricks or supernatural powers, but the memory that we are frequency first, biology second. You were taught to believe in objects, but energy is not an object. It is a relationship. It's not what something is. It's how something moves, how it feels, how it affects. The truth is this: you don't control energy by force. You align with it through coherence. You don't use it like a tool. You remember it like a home. Every ancient culture knew this. That's why their wisdom didn't begin with beliefs. It began with rhythm, with breath, with sound, with the elements, with ritual. They weren't primitive, they were precise. They knew that what you do with your body changes the shape of your field. That intention is not a thought, it's a frequency. That your words are not just communication, they're vibration shaped into sound. The modern world thinks of technology as the height of evolution. But the original technology was human. Your nervous system, your breath, your awareness, all of it built to modulate the unseen forces shaping your life. So what happened? Why do so few remember? Because energy control does not serve control systems. If people remember how to shift a room just by presence, they stop needing status. If they learn to transmute emotion into clarity, they stop needing pills. If they reclaim the power to sense truth through vibration, they stop needing experts to decode reality for them. Energy literacy is dangerous to any system built on hierarchy. So it was hidden, not in vaults, but in plain sight, dismissed through ridicule, buried beneath noise, marketed into distraction. And yet the current never left. It's still there, in your skin, your dreams, the way your body tenses when your soul is dishonored. The signs are everywhere, but no one taught you how to read them. Until now. This is where it begins. Not with learning something new, but with remembering something old. Something older than your name, older than your wounds, older than your culture. The memory that you are not separate from energy. You are energy, made aware. The truth isn't hiding. It's vibrating, waiting for you to slow down, to breathe deeper, to feel beyond what you've been taught is real. And when you do, the shift begins. Not in fireworks or flashes, but in subtle recognitions, in a peace that arrives for no reason, in a clarity that cuts through the noise, in a sense of power that asks for nothing but presence. Because energy doesn't need to be summoned, it needs to be noticed, and the moment you notice, the moment you feel it again, everything starts to change. Everything begins in vibration. Before a word is spoken, before a decision is made, before a body is formed, there is frequency. Not as theory, but as the silent geometry behind all things. You are not a solid object moving through space. You are a field of frequencies constantly in motion, constantly interacting with the fields around you. Your thoughts are waves, your emotions are signatures, your body is an echo chamber, and everything you call reality is nothing more than vibration made visible, slowed down into form. The table you touch, the pain you carry, the memory that won't leave. All of it is structure built from vibration, locked into rhythm, moving through cycles. This is not mysticism. This is physics hidden in poetry. The reason your life often feels off, fragmented, confusing, misaligned, is not because you're broken. It's because your field has been distorted. You've been immersed in dissonance for so long that harmony feels foreign. The media you consume, the thoughts you repeat, the relationships you tolerate, they all shape your signal. And most of that shaping has happened without your awareness. You didn't consent to it. You inherited it, absorbed it, became it. And now you walk around thinking those patterns are you. But they're not. They are residue, echoes, code layered over your original frequency. And beneath all the noise, that original signal is still humming, still waiting to be felt. You are not just in the world, you are broadcasting into it. Every moment, every breath, every choice sends out a signal. And that signal is not neutral, it's magnetic. It draws, repels, shapes, and mirrors. This is why affirmations fail when they don't match your core vibration. This is why manifestation doesn't work when your nervous system is in chaos. The universe does not respond to your thoughts. It responds to your frequency. And your frequency is not what you say, it's what you embody when you're not trying. This is the truth they don't teach. That reality is not responding to your will. It's responding to your resonance. The ancients lived by this knowing. They didn't just believe in the sacred, they aligned with it. Temples weren't random, they were resonant chambers. Rituals weren't performance, they were recalibration. Mantras weren't magic words, they were vibrational codes. Every movement, every tone, every breath was a tuning mechanism. Not because they were superstitious, but because they understood the blueprint. That the body is an instrument, that the heart emits a measurable field, that the voice can shatter illusions or build temples. They didn't need religion to reach the divine. They became coherent with it. They remembered that spirit doesn't arrive. Spirit is always here. You align with it or you don't. And now here you are, not searching for something new, but remembering something ancient. That you don't fix your life from the outside in. You retune your field. You recalibrate your rhythm. You come back into alignment with the original architecture that was never lost, only buried. This isn't about becoming powerful. It's about becoming clear. Because clarity is power. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that resonates. That kind that needs no defense, no justification. Just presence, just signal, just truth. And when you live from that frequency, when every breath, every word, every step vibrates in harmony with who you actually are, then energy begins to move on your behalf. Not because you forced it, but because you finally remembered how to speak its language. They told you that you were separate, that your mind was yours alone, that your emotions were private, that your body was just a vehicle, and that spirit, if it existed at all, was somewhere else entirely. They built a world around this lie, a world of boundaries, identities, nations, religions, and roles. A world where wholeness was fractured into labels, where your soul was sliced into boxes and measured against systems that never knew your name. This illusion of separation has shaped everything. It made you feel isolated even in a crowded room. It made you seek validation for what you already are. And worst of all, it made you forget the truth, that there is no separation, only frequency disguised as form, only energy pretending to be alone. This lie didn't begin with malice. It began with fear. A long unspoken fear that if people remembered their oneness, The systems built on control would crumble. So you were trained to believe in borders, both physical and metaphysical. You were told your thoughts belonged to you and you alone. You were conditioned to mistrust your intuition, to question your inner voice, to fear silence, because silence reveals signal, and signal reveals connection, and connection reveals power. Not the power of dominance, but the power of remembrance. The power that comes from knowing that the person in front of you is not other, but mirror. That the world around you is not external, but an extension of your inner state. That everything you experience is part of a vast field of energy expressing itself in infinite forms. Look closely. The signs of unity are everywhere. The way flocks of birds turn in unison without a leader. The way your breath syncs with someone you love. The way a mother knows her child is in danger before a phone rings. These are not anomalies. They are reminders. Reminders that you are part of a field that cannot be seen, but can always be felt. A field where thought moves faster than speech, where emotion travels beyond bodies, where intention bends reality. The field is not a concept. It is the unseen structure of existence. And you are not in it. You are of it. Your thoughts ripple through it. Your pain echoes in it. Your healing transforms it. The ancients lived from this knowing. They didn't talk about energy. They danced with it. They didn't analyze intuition. They followed it. They didn't worship nature. They listened to it as an extension of self. Fire was not an element. It was a teacher. Water was not a substance, it was memory. Trees were not scenery, they were sentient, and the body was not separate from the cosmos, it was its instrument. They understood that you don't find your place in the universe. You are the universe, temporarily remembering itself in human form. You are not a visitor here. You are a node in the infinite network of being, vibrating in rhythm with everything you think is outside of you. To control energy, you must first dismantle the illusion of separateness. You must stop pretending your thoughts are isolated, your pain irrelevant, your joy meaningless. You must stop thinking of energy as something to reach for and start feeling it as something that is already within and around you, waiting to be acknowledged. Every time you soften the boundary between self and other, you reclaim a piece of your power. Every time you feel rather than analyze, you enter the field. Every time you recognize that the fear you see in someone else lives in you too, the veil thins. And that's how the remembering begins. Not through effort, but through surrender. Not through force, but through resonance. Not by adding anything new, but by removing everything false. Separation is the dream. Connection is the waking. And once you wake up, the field responds. Immediately, intimately, completely. Your body is not an obstacle to energy. It is the gateway. Beneath the bones, beneath the skin, beneath the thoughts you identify with, there is a system more ancient than language. Your nervous system. It is not just a biological mechanism for survival. It is the interface between the seen and the unseen. The translator between vibration and form. The nervous system is the bridge between matter and meaning, between input and intuition. It receives, processes, and broadcasts energy constantly. But if you've been trained to ignore it, to override it, to silence its signals, you've been taught to turn away from the very doorway into the field. You can't tune into energy if your system is in defense. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, these are not just psychological states. They are frequency shifts. When you are in survival mode, your field contracts. Your awareness narrows, your sensitivity dulls. You can't hear intuition through the static of fear. You can't channel presence when your body thinks it's under attack. And in the modern world, most people are stuck in chronic defense. The body doesn't feel safe, so the energy doesn't flow. Not because it can't, but because the portal is locked. Not by choice, but by trauma. not by laziness, but by nervous systems that were never taught how to soften. Regulation is the forgotten language of power, not power over others, but power over the signal you're sending. When your breath slows, your field opens. When your heart rate steadies, your coherence increases. When your body feels safe, your energy becomes magnetic. This isn't wishful thinking, it's biology aligned with metaphysics. The heart emits an electromagnetic field measurable from feet away. The gut produces neurotransmitters that shape thought. The skin senses resonance before words are spoken. The nervous system isn't just part of you, it is the conductor. And the more you regulate it, the more fluent you become in the language of energy. Ancient cultures knew this, even if they never named it nervous system. They created rituals not just for worship, but for regulation. Chanting wasn't aesthetic, it was vagal stimulation. Breathwork wasn't trendy, it was vibrational recalibration. Fasting wasn't punishment, it was a reset of biological rhythms. Movement wasn't exercise, it was nervous system modulation. They didn't separate body and spirit because they knew they were one field. And the body was not a barrier, it was the vessel, a sacred instrument that had to be tuned before any real energy work could begin. The temple wasn't out there, it was in the spine, in the breath, in the heartbeat. So if you want to control energy, don't start with visualization. Start with your system. Sit with your body in silence. Feel the places that clench when truth is near. Listen to the tremors beneath your thoughts. Regulate not to feel better, but to feel fully. Because when the nervous system is coherent, the field expands. You become a clear signal. You stop leaking energy through reactivity. You stop distorting energy through unresolved pain. And the universe begins to respond, not because it finally noticed you, but because you finally noticed you. This is the real path. Not upward, not outward, but inward, through the gate of the body into the vast cathedral of the field that has been waiting for you to arrive, not as a visitor, but as its center. You were never meant to suppress your emotions. You were meant to ride them like waves, not drown in them nor dam them up. Emotions are not distractions from the spiritual path. They are the path. Each one is a frequency, a message, a movement of energy trying to complete a circuit. When you feel joy, the field expands. When you feel grief, the field deepens. When you feel rage, it burns away what is false. But what happens when you're taught that emotions are weaknesses, that tears are shameful, that anger is dangerous, that grief is unproductive? The energy stops moving. It stagnates. It hardens, and what was once fluid becomes frozen inside you. You don't carry old emotions because you're broken. You carry them because no one taught you how to let them move. Instead of being guided through the process, you were told to get over it, calm down, toughen up. And so, emotion became memory. The body stored what the field couldn't complete. Your shoulders remember the weight you never got to cry out. Your gut remembers the betrayal you weren't allowed to name. Your chest remembers the love you silenced for the sake of survival. These aren't metaphors. They're frequencies encoded in tissue, looping like unresolved melodies. And no amount of mental insight will transmute what was never allowed to move through. To control energy, you must become fluent in your own emotional landscape. Not by judging what you feel, but by listening. Each emotion has a signature. Shame collapses your field inward. Envy distorts your lens. Anxiety speeds the signal until it becomes static. But when you feel fully, without story, without resistance, the energy completes its arc. The sadness becomes softness. The anger becomes clarity. The fear becomes precision. Emotions are sacred currents that carry you from one state to another, if you allow them. But that requires presence, not analysis, not repression, just breath and attention. Two of the most ancient tools you've always had. The mystics didn't bypass emotion, they mastered it. not by numbing it, but by following it to its source. In Sufi poetry, longing is the doorway to union. In Taoist alchemy, anger is transmuted into righteous action. In the Vedas, grief is not seen as loss, but as purification. They understood that to move energy is to honor what arises, not escape it. Even the ancients who sat in silence for days were not trying to rise above emotion. They were creating a container large enough to hold it all. Because when you can sit with sorrow without shrinking, when you can let joy flood through without clinging, you are in alignment. You are the field. So feel it, all of it, without apology, without agenda. Let the emotions rise and fall like weather across the sky of your being. Don't name them good or bad. Name them true. Let them move. Let them shake the false stories loose. Let them soften the armor. Let them return your system to flow. Because emotion that is felt becomes energy that is freed. And that freedom, once tasted, becomes your compass. Not because it makes you invincible, but because it makes you real. You were never here to feel safe. You were here to feel everything, fully, courageously, honestly. And in doing so, remember what it means to be energy in human form. Not a concept, not a role, but a current. Alive, awake, unblocked, whole. Most people believe their thoughts are private, silent things trapped in the skull. But this is a lie the modern world has normalized. Thoughts are not just internal dialogue. They are frequencies, signals, waves, and like any wave, they travel. They influence. They create interference or resonance. You don't just think, you broadcast, and the field around you is always listening, always reflecting, always responding. Every thought emits a tone into the subtle architecture of the real. And if you don't understand this, your mind becomes the greatest leak in your energetic system, not because it's too active, but because it's undisciplined. You've been taught to worship thought, to believe that the louder and faster your mind moves, the more intelligent you are. But true intelligence is not speed, it's clarity. It's stillness that listens before reacting. In a world built on noise, a quiet mind is rebellion. And not just because it feels good, but because silence amplifies signal. When your mental field is cluttered with doubt, worry, judgment, and repetition, your energy becomes chaotic. You can't manifest clarity from confusion. You can't tune your reality while broadcasting distortion. The field doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your vibration. And thought is a major source of that vibration. Each thought is a tuning fork. Think fear long enough, and you begin to attune to a reality where fear finds you. Think unworthiness long enough, and the field begins to close. You're not cursed. You're coherent with your belief. This is why affirmations only work when they match your deeper frequency. You can repeat, "I am powerful," all day, but if your subconscious is humming, "I am unsafe," the field will reflect the latter. The nervous system follows the deeper rhythm, not the superficial one. This is not punishment, it's feedback. Your reality is not broken, it's precise. The issue isn't manifestation, it's misalignment between what you say, what you think, and what you embody. The mystics knew the power of thought, not because they read it in a book, but because they experienced it in stillness. They trained the mind not to dominate, but to become silent enough to listen to the field. In Buddhist tradition, right thought is not just moral, it is magnetic. In Hermetic teachings, the mind is the all. In Kabbalah, thought is a tool of creation. These teachings weren't metaphors, they were literal blueprints for interacting with reality. A quiet mind doesn't mean an empty mind, it means a clean signal, where thought is not a storm, but a compass, where intention is not drowned by doubt, where focus becomes force. So if you want to control energy, you must take responsibility for the frequencies you emit through thought, not by suppressing the mind, but by refining it, not by fighting the thoughts, but by becoming aware of which ones harmonize and which ones fragment. Ask, does this thought expand me or contract me? Does it align or distort? Does it bring me closer to presence or deeper into noise? Thought is a current, and you are the conductor. Direct it, shape it, or let it go. Because every time you reclaim the mind, not through control, but through awareness, you sharpen your field. And with a sharp field, your energy becomes undeniable. Your presence, a transmitter. Your silence, a signal. Your intention, a force the field cannot ignore. Your attention is the most sacred currency you have. It is not neutral. It is not passive. It is the laser that carves reality from the raw potential of the field. Whatever you place your attention on, you feed. Whatever you turn away from, you starve. And most people walk through life with their attention hijacked by screens, by fear, by other people's agendas, never realizing that they are unconsciously feeding realities they never chose. Attention is the first act of creation. It is the silent prayer you make with every glance, every thought, every breath. You don't have to speak your desires. Your attention already tells the field what matters to you. This is why every ancient tradition emphasized focus, not as a productivity tool, but as a spiritual discipline. The yogis practiced drishti, the steady gaze that anchors the mind. The mystics withdrew into deserts and mountains not to escape, but to purify their attention. They understood that energy follows awareness, that the quality of your reality reflects the quality of your focus. And in a world built on distraction, to reclaim your attention is to reclaim your power, because the field does not respond to scattered energy. It responds to clear signal, and the sharper your focus, the more precisely energy moves. Think about it. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. This is not metaphor, it is mechanics. Focus on lack, and your field contracts. Focus on beauty, and your field opens. Focus on what's broken, and your nervous system enters survival. Focus on what's possible, and your vibration begins to lift. But most people don't choose where they focus. They react, they scroll, they consume, and in doing so, they surrender their most powerful tool, the ability to direct the force of creation with precision. This is not about ignoring the world. It's about choosing how you participate in it. What you feed becomes your frequency. What you observe becomes your orbit. When your attention is fractured, your energy leaks, not just metaphorically, but literally. Your body tires, your thoughts race, your intuition goes quiet. This is why multitasking weakens your field. This is why constant stimulation leads to energetic burnout. The mind was not designed to jump from signal to signal without consequence. Every shift in attention costs you energy. Every time you open a new tab, scroll a new feed, argue a new headline, your field gets a little more fragmented. And in that fragmentation, your power dims. Not because you are broken, but because you are stretched thin across realities you did not consciously choose. So how do you reclaim your energy? Reclaim your attention. Bring it back from the headlines that drain you, from the screens that hypnotize you, from the narratives that numb you. Choose where it goes. Nourish what nourishes you. Withdraw from what dims you. This is the beginning of energetic sovereignty. To place your awareness like a sword, not a sponge. To look not at everything, but at what matters. To see not with fear, but with focus. Because what you see, you become. What you dwell on, you invite. And what you give your attention to, fully, lovingly, without distraction, will bloom. Not by chance, by law. Attention is direction. Direction becomes pattern. Pattern becomes frequency. And frequency is the language of reality. Speak wisely. See clearly. Focus like it matters because it does. Presence is not a soft concept. It is not passive, not fragile, not optional. It is the core frequency of real power. The most potent people you've ever met weren't the loudest, the richest, or the most visible. They were the ones whose presence shifted the space before they even spoke. You've felt it. When someone enters a room and the air thickens with something you can't name. When a glance carries more truth than a speech. When silence feels louder than noise. That is not charisma. That is coherence. That is energy concentrated into the moment so fully that the field bends around it. Presence is what happens when your mind, body, and field are in the same place at the same time. No leakage into the past, no projection into the future. Just full awareness rooted in the now. The reason presence feels rare is because the world trains you to be elsewhere. Your attention is pulled forward into worry, backward into regret, sideways into comparison. But energy only moves through the portal of this moment, not tomorrow, not when you're ready. Now, the more you leave this moment, the more disconnected you feel, not because life is empty, but because you're not actually here to receive it. The nervous system recognizes presence. It relaxes into it. The heart rate slows, the breath deepens, and the field stabilizes. This is why presence heals. Not because you say the right thing, but because your energy says, I'm here, I'm whole, you're safe. True presence is medicine. It's why children gravitate towards certain adults. It's why animals trust certain strangers. It's why you remember the way someone looked at you more than what they said. Presence bypasses language. It is the language of the field. It carries the signal of integrity, of embodiment, of alignment. And the field does not argue with presence. It responds. In spiritual circles, presence is often romanticized. But in reality, it's a discipline, a moment-by-moment choice to return. To your breath, to your body, to the space between thoughts. It doesn't require perfection, only honesty. It asks, are you here, or are you performing being here? Are you grounded, or are you rehearsing your reaction? Are you open, or are you protecting an image? The field knows. There is no hiding in energy. You're either present or you're not. And when you are, reality meets you differently. Doors open, people soften, insights arrive. Not because you chased them, but because you stopped running from yourself. To control energy, cultivate presence. Anchor into your body, into sensation, into sound. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice the tension behind your eyes. Witness the rise and fall of your breath without needing to change it. These are not mindfulness techniques. These are gateways into the real. The only place energy moves is here. The only time you can shift it is now. Everything else is illusion. Familiar, seductive, but false. Presence is not the end goal. It is the condition in which every transformation becomes possible. When you return to presence, you return to power. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that creates. Instantly, effortlessly, authentically. You are walking through a field that never forgets. Not metaphorically, but vibrationally. Every thought you've ever held, every emotion you've suppressed, every word you've spoken, it lingers in the field. Energy is never lost. It is stored, transmuted, echoed, and what you call memory isn't just in your brain. It's in your field. The field around you is a living archive, and when something triggers you, it's not always the present moment that hurts, it's the field pulling forward an unprocessed frequency, asking to be released. This is why time doesn't heal all wounds. Energy does. Attention does. Integration does. When you walk into certain spaces and feel heavy or anxious or unsettled, that's not random. That's resonance. Your field is reacting to the imprint of what happened there. Energy leaves trails. Just as trauma can haunt a home, joy can saturate a space. This is why sacred sites feel electric. Why some rooms feel like relief and others like static. The field holds stories. But unlike history books, it doesn't care about facts. It remembers in vibration. It holds the frequency of what has been felt, not what has been said. This means healing isn't about changing your story. It's about changing your signal. You are not just carrying your own field. You are moving through collective ones, ancestral ones, generational fields thick with unspoken grief, inherited shame, borrowed beliefs. You think your anxiety is personal, but some of it is old signal still playing through your bloodline. Your hesitation, your doubt, your fear of visibility. These may not have started with you, but they live in you now, and they will echo forward unless you pause, notice, and retune the frequency. This is why inner work matters. Not because you're flawed, but because you're part of a chain. And when you shift your field, you break loops that have lasted centuries. The ancients knew this. That memory lived in more than the mind. They built rituals not just to remember, but to clear. They used sound, fire, fasting, movement to discharge stagnant frequencies and make the body a vessel again. Shamans didn't just speak with spirits, they tuned fields. Priests weren't just gatekeepers, they were resonance engineers. When we forgot this, we replaced ritual with routine, spirit with doctrine, energy with dogma. And the field dimmed. Not because it disappeared, but because we stopped listening. We stopped sensing. We stopped feeling what was always there, that the unseen is not less real. It is simply more subtle. To control energy, you must first become aware of what your field is holding. Sit with it, not to analyze, but to feel. What keeps rising? What never seems to leave? What emotion repeats without reason? These are not flaws. These are frequencies waiting for your presence. Speak to your field. Ask it, what have I ignored? What wants to move? What have I inherited that no longer belongs here? And then listen, not for words but for sensation, for softening, for stillness. Because once you bring your attention to the field, it begins to respond. The memory begins to move, the weight begins to lift. Not because you escaped it, but because you finally allowed it to complete. The field never forgets, but it will release if you meet it with presence, intention, and truth. Ritual is not superstition. It is technology, ancient, precise, and vibrational. Before there were machines, there were movements. Before apps and algorithms, there were rhythms and symbols. You've been told that ritual belongs to the past, to the primitive, to the uneducated. But the truth is, ritual is how the ancients encoded their knowledge of energy. It's how they preserved the tuning of the field. Every chant, every gesture, every object placed with care was an act of alignment. Ritual wasn't about belief, it was about resonance. It was the language the body used to speak directly to the unseen. Modern life has stripped this away. Ceremony has been replaced with habit. Reverence replaced with routine. We wake up, scroll, eat, repeat, never noticing that we've become dissociated from every act we perform. Presence has become a luxury, not a foundation. But your energy does not care about convenience. It only responds to coherence. And ritual brings coherence. It creates a boundary around a moment. It tells the field, this is sacred. That simple declaration, made with intention, is enough to alter your frequency. Because the field listens not to your opinions, but to your actions. And ritual is action encoded with meaning. The nervous system loves ritual. It relaxes into rhythm. It softens in repetition. This is why breath work, prayer, dance, and sacred sound feel like medicine. They regulate the system, allowing energy to move through without resistance. Ritual bypasses the ego because it speaks the language of the body. You don't have to believe in a ritual for it to work. You have to feel it. You have to mean it. You have to show up with your full self, not just your thoughts. That's why it's not about complexity. It's about sincerity. A simple gesture, done with full presence, carries more power than an elaborate performance done in distraction. The ancients were not performing spirituality. They were maintaining frequency. They knew that the invisible becomes visible through repeated acts of alignment. They walked the same paths, lit the same fires, sang the same tones, not because they were trapped in tradition, but because they understood energy needs consistency. Ritual was not dogma, it was discipline. A reminder that the field does not respond to randomness, it responds to rhythm. That's why sacred ritual always involved the body. Standing, bowing, breathing, anointing, lighting. The body becomes the vessel. The movement becomes the tuning. The space becomes the portal. You don't need incense or ancient texts to return to ritual. You need intention. You need presence. You need to stop waiting for permission to make your life sacred again. Light a candle when you wake. Bless your food with your eyes closed. Speak your dreams into water and drink it. Breathe in rhythm before you speak hard truths. These are not symbolic. They are vibrational adjustments to the field. And when done consistently, they begin to rewire your reality. The sacred is not somewhere else. It is waiting in the space between your distractions. Ritual brings it forward, not to please something above you, but to activate what's already within you. Ritual is not the performance of power. It is its remembering. One breath, one step, one moment at a time. You've been taught to chase, to hustle, to strive, to grip your desires with clenched fists and drag them into existence through willpower. But the field does not respond to force. It responds to frequency. The truth is, what you're seeking is already moving toward you the moment your vibration matches its signal. You don't manifest by reaching harder. You manifest by becoming a match. Magnetism is the natural consequence of alignment. When your energy is clean, clear, and coherent, reality begins to organize itself around your presence. Not because you demanded it, but because you remembered you didn't have to. Force is born from lack, from the belief that life must be wrestled into submission, that you must earn your worth through effort. It is a symptom of a dysregulated system, of a field that's been taught survival instead of sovereignty. But magnetism arises from wholeness. It is the silent gravity that draws things in, not by grasping, but by radiating. You've felt it in others. The people who walk in peace, who do less and receive more, who speak gently and are still heard. They don't need to convince. Their field speaks louder than their words. This isn't magic. This is resonance. To become magnetic is not to become special, it's to become tuned. Your desires are not random. They are echoes of a future frequency already alive within you. But you can't reach that frequency by pretending. You have to become it, not in your thoughts alone, but in your nervous system, your breath, your choices, your field. You can't call in love while vibrating resentment. You can't call in abundance while vibrating self-rejection. The field only reflects what you are, not what you wish you were. This is why energy work is not surface level. It's cellular. It's not about performing alignment. It's about embodying it so completely that the field has no choice but to shift. Magnetism is not passive. It requires discipline. Not the discipline of effort, but the discipline of clarity. The ability to notice when you've fallen out of frequency. The courage to stop chasing and start attuning. The humility to feel the discomfort of waiting without reaching. The field loves clarity. It organizes itself around intention backed by coherence, and it dissolves around desperation, urgency, and noise. You cannot fake magnetism, but you can cultivate it through regulation, through ritual, through radical self-honesty, through subtracting everything that's not true until your presence is sharp enough to draw in exactly what belongs. So stop chasing, start clearing, start refining. Begin each day not by asking what you should do, but what you must become. Begin each choice not by asking what it gets you, but what it broadcasts. Become a signal so clear that life recognizes itself in you. Magnetism is not about pulling harder, it's about resonating deeper. Let the field do the heavy lifting. Let the signal call what's meant for you. This is not laziness. This is mastery, and it begins the moment you stop trying to control outcomes and start controlling your frequency. Not through force, but through presence, through coherence, through truth. The field does not respond to confusion. It responds to coherence. Not confidence, not charisma, not calculation. Coherent. That deep inner alignment where your thoughts, emotions, body, and energy are all vibrating in harmony. Coherence is not loud, it's not flashy, it's not always seen, but it is felt, instantly, unmistakably. A coherent being walks into a space and things change. Not because they force it, but because they are it. They carry the stillness of someone who is not divided against themselves. And in a world addicted to fragmentation, coherence is the loudest frequency in the room. Most people walk through life misaligned, thinking one thing, feeling another, saying something else entirely, living in contradiction, leaking energy through every crack in their system. And then they wonder why the field doesn't respond, why things don't shift, why manifestations fall flat. But the field is exact. It reflects what is, not what you wish to project. You can't affirm love while vibrating abandonment. You can't preach truth while your gut coils in self-betrayal. The universe isn't punishing you, it's mirroring your state. When your internal system is scattered, your results are scattered. When you become internally unified, life bends. Coherence doesn't mean perfection. It means resonance. It means you're willing to feel what's true, say what's real, and act in alignment with both. That's rare, because it requires letting go of the masks, the performance, the need to be understood by others. Coherence doesn't always look convenient. Sometimes it means saying no when it would be easier to say yes. Sometimes it means resting when the world demands hustle. Sometimes it means walking away from what looks right but feels wrong. The more coherent you become, the more allergic you grow to anything that fractures your frequency. Ancient traditions honored coherence as the source of real power. Yogic teachings spoke of samadhi, not a trance, but total alignment of awareness. Indigenous rituals were built around restoring balance, not just with nature, but within the self. Egyptian temple initiations tested coherence through pressure. Could you remain centered in chaos, aligned under scrutiny, still within the storm? They knew that only a coherent vessel could channel energy without distortion. That incoherence breeds interference. That frequency is fragile in the untrained. That clarity is not something you achieve. It is something you return to, again and again. To command the field, you don't need more force. You need more alignment. When your mind is calm, your body grounded, your emotion clear, and your intention true, you become a command, not a request. The field doesn't hesitate. It reorganizes. Not because you overpowered it, but because you stopped contradicting yourself. This is the quiet power of coherence. It doesn't chase. It anchors. It doesn't demand. It radiates. And the moment you choose it, not once, but as a way of being, the field becomes fluid, responsive, precise. Because energy doesn't follow noise. It follows truth. And coherence is truth made vibrational, relentless, undeniable, magnetic, whole. Insight means nothing without integration. The vision, the breakthrough, the sudden flash of truth. It's only the beginning. Real transformation doesn't happen in the moment you see something new. It happens in the moments afterward when no one is watching and you choose to live differently. The field doesn't shift when you understand. It shifts when you embody. Integration is what converts frequency into form. Without it, your awakening becomes a memory, not a movement. A flicker of light that fades back into the static. But when you integrate, the signal stays. It roots. It reshapes your field from the inside out. Integration is not glamorous. It is repetition. It is uncomfortable honesty. It is choosing alignment again and again, especially when old patterns scream for survival. After the retreat, after the meditation, after the peak experience, you come home. And the test begins. Will you treat your nervous system like sacred circuitry, or will you feed it more of the chaos it just cleared? Will you guard your field like a sanctuary, or hand it over to distraction and noise? This is why so many lose the shift, not because the insight was false, but because the vessel wasn't ready to sustain it. The frequency outpaced the foundation. The ancients never separated revelation from responsibility. A vision wasn't something you shared on social media. It was something you honored with action. If you saw truth, you lived it. If you were given insight, you carried it like fire. That was the cost of initiation, not the experience, but the discipline to let it shape you, to burn away what no longer fit, to stretch into new behaviors, new boundaries, new ways of seeing. They knew the real ceremony began when the incense cleared, when the voices quieted, when you were alone with the choice to continue as before, or to become what you glimpsed. In this way, integration is the initiation. It's where knowledge becomes wisdom, where frequency becomes embodiment, where energy becomes identity. Most people chase one awakening after another, high on realization but hollow in practice. They don't lack insight, they lack integration. And so they loop, mistaking stimulation for evolution. But the mystic doesn't need more visions. The mystic learns to become the vision, to move through life as the living expression of what was once just a whisper. This is the way. Not intensity, but consistency. Not seeking, but anchoring. Not collecting tools, but using the ones you already hold. So ask yourself, not what do I know, but what have I become? Not what truth have I seen, but what behaviors have I changed? What energy do I now protect? What distractions have I released? What boundaries have I strengthened? This is how the field measures growth, not in moments, but in momentum. Every choice is a tuning. Every habit is a broadcast. Every time you align your walk with your knowing, you build coherence, and coherence commands reality. Integration is not a footnote, it is the crucible, the proving ground, the initiation. And when you meet it with devotion, the field responds, not with applause, but with precision, with resonance, with new realities that match the version of you that is no longer pretending, but embodying what the soul has always known. You are not who you think you are who you vibrate as. Identity is not fixed, it's fluid, a field of frequencies shaped by memory, belief, trauma, and choice. What you call me is a broadcast, one that's constantly sending signals into the field, pulling in people, patterns, and possibilities that match your vibration. You don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And who you are is not defined by your story, your wounds, your resume. It's defined by the frequency you stabilize, the energy you embody when you're not trying to impress, when you're not shrinking, when you're not performing. That's your real signal. That's the self the universe listens to. Most people never question the signal they carry. They adopt an identity early, usually based on survival, on approval, on inheritance, and then spend the rest of their lives defending it, even when it limits them, even when it hurts. I'm not enough. I'm too much. I'm the helper. I'm the outsider. These aren't truths. They're frequencies frozen by repetition. And the longer you hold them, the more the field reflects them back to you. This isn't personal. It's precise. The field doesn't care what identity you hold. It simply mirrors it. Energy follows definition. And if your definition of self is distorted, your reality will be too. But here's the secret. Identity is not a sentence. It's a setting. It can be adjusted, rewritten, retuned. You can shift your signal without waiting for external validation. You can begin to vibrate at the level of your truth, not your past. This is not about affirmations pasted over shame. It's about dissolving the false self you've been taught to maintain, the self built on protection, on patterns, on pain. The real you is not hidden. It's buried under energetic debris, under habits that reinforce who you had to be, not who you actually are. To shift your reality, you must shift the signal. And to shift the signal, you must question the identity holding the current in place. The mystics knew that ego was not the enemy, it was the mask. And the work wasn't to destroy it, but to see it. To realize that every identity you wear is a costume, and you can take it off. Not because it was bad, but because it no longer resonates. This is why spiritual awakening often feels like death. You are not losing your life. You are losing the frequency that created the life you no longer fit inside. This shedding is not a crisis. It's a recalibration. Your field is asking you to become congruent with who you've always been beneath the distortion. And every time you release an old identity, the field updates. Your reality responds. The doors that wouldn't open before begin to slide wide with ease, not because the world changed, but because you did. So ask yourself, gently but honestly, who am I when I stop trying to be liked? Who am I without my wounds? Without the story, without the image? Who am I when I'm alone with the frequency of truth? That version of you, the one who doesn't need to pretend, the one whose energy doesn't splinter under pressure, that's the version the field responds to. That's the vibration that reshapes timelines. Identity is not a cage, it's a code. And when you choose a new frequency, a new identity arises, not as performance, but as presence. The real you was never lost, just buried. And every breath of truth you take, every false mask you release, is a return to the original signal. Whole, undistorted, magnetic, free. The deeper you go into energy, the quieter it gets. Mastery doesn't look like fireworks. It doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It refines. It softens. It sharpens. At the highest levels, energy work is not about doing more. It's about doing less with more precision. The master doesn't speak often, but when they do, the room shifts. The master doesn't always move, but when they do, space opens. This is not mystery. It's subtlety. Subtle doesn't mean small. It means calibrated. It means tuned so precisely that it no longer needs effort to be effective. Energy responds not to volume, but to purity of signal. Most seekers miss this. They chase intensity. They confuse drama with depth. They want the biggest visions, the loudest confirmations, the cosmic downloads. But intensity is often compensation for a lack of sensitivity. When you're not yet attuned to the subtle, the field has to shout. It has to crash your life into chaos, send you signs you can't ignore, rip things away so you finally pay attention. But as you evolve, the volume lowers. The whispers become enough. The breath, the twitch in your gut, the flicker in someone's eye, these become the messages. Because now your system is tuned. Now you can feel. Subtlety is what allows you to walk into a room and know the truth before a word is spoken. It's what lets you sense the direction of a decision before it appears. It's what gives you access to the timelines hidden behind logic. The master doesn't need to ask for signs. Their system is the sign. Their life becomes the mirror of their inner coherence. They move with such alignment that the field has no choice but to follow. This doesn't mean life gets easier. It means your response becomes cleaner. You no longer react. You adjust. Slightly. Precisely. With such nuance that others call it grace, but you know it's just calibration. The ancients lived in a world of subtle energy. They built entire systems on tone, gesture, silence, breath. They understood that reality is not changed by brute force, but by invisible architecture. They trained their attention like a blade, not to dominate, but to discern, because subtlety requires discernment. You must know the difference between emotion and intuition, between fear and signal, between urge and resonance. That difference isn't found in books. It's cultivated through presence, through stillness, through countless small choices that align you deeper and deeper with truth. And eventually, the gap between signal and self disappears. You are the field. This is the highest mastery, not control, but communion, not performance, but presence. To live in such deep alignment that the field bends without command, that your life becomes a mirror of your frequency, effortlessly, silently, completely. To reach this is not to become someone new, but to become invisible in your effort, to move energy with a glance, to transmute distortion with a breath, to change reality by being a new vibration. That is the art of subtlety. And that is where real power lives, not in display, not in dominance, but in frequency so clean, so integrated, so aligned that the universe doesn't need to be convinced. It already agrees.